every 30 days on the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, both to the ad hoc and to council, and that will be coming up as well too. So I would make the request that we might schedule the next meeting of this committee for July 9th, Friday, okay. July 9th, if that would be amenable to the committee. In terms of the national statistics on where the ARA funds stand, there are three categories: tax benefits, entitlements, and then contracts, grants, and loans, which is the area that we participate in. There was $787 billion totally. In the area of contracts, grants, and loans, the total amount of recovery funds was $275 billion, and so far the federal government has paid out $112 billion, so only about 40% of the funds have actually been paid out. In the area of tax benefits, there was $288 billion available, and $163 billion has been paid out there, more than 50%. And in the area of entitlements, $224 billion available, and $131 billion has been paid out so far by the federal government. So there's still more money to be paid out as a result of reimbursements. I wanted to also report on, related to legislation at the national level, we've been interested in a bill called H.R. 4812 by George Miller, which is called the Local Jobs for America Act. This was a $75 billion bill over 2 years that would provide money directly to metropolitan areas based on population, poverty, and unemployment. The city of Los Angeles would stand to gain $615 million a year for under this bill. Unfortunately, the bill has been stuck in the House and doesn't appear to be going anywhere, in part because the House has rules that are called pay-go. So for any spending programs that you have to find offsets for that, and they have not been able to do that.
Has the city taken a position on that bill?
Yes, we have. The council's taken a position, and the mayor's communicated that support on that, and we'll continue to work on it. On the Senate side, however, though, Sherrod Brown, the senator from Ohio, has just introduced a companion bill called S-3500, which would basically do the same thing that the Miller bill would do. So I might recommend that we'll work with your office and others to make sure that the council takes a position and the mayor communicates a position of support on that bill as well too. But it's a difficult time going on back in Congress right now. There's just not the stomach for passing spending bills. And you may have been following it. There's a tax extender bill that's been hung up in the Senate. They take votes every other day, and they seem to get less and less votes, even though they try to trim down the amount of money. This would include money for unemployment, to extend unemployment benefits. It also includes money to do what's called the Medicare doc fix, which as of today, doctors will receive a 21% cut in the payments that they'll be receiving from Medicare, and yet despite the fact of these ongoing problems, the Senate has been unable to pass a bill. They keep narrowing the bill down, but it's not able to be fully paid for. In addition to that, there's an emergency supplemental bill to fund the war that was supposed to be done by Memorial Day. In there's $43 million for teachers that are being laid off, and $43 billion for teachers being laid off, and $2 billion for police and fire. And again, the Congress hasn't been able to come up with to be able to pass it in the House. There is an effort being made by the House Democrats to see if they can use unspent stimulus money to pay for the teachers. However, the White House is not really supportive of that. They would like to continue to see if they can spend the stimulus money. And so that's where we stand right now, that there's some measures out there, but it appears as though the Congress, particularly with the Republicans and the Blue Dogs, are not willing to increase the deficit.
Now, would it be fair to say the position of the city now, we're transitioning from seeking grants to now accepting grants and monitoring our compliance?
That's correct, yes. In fact, I was just asking Stacy too, other than a few small grants that we'll be bringing to you for approval, most all of those grants have been processed and have been approved, and we are now in the going out and expending funds and carrying out the project. So, and of course, with that then comes all the auditors, and they come down to check on how we're doing that.
Now, is there a likelihood of a phase 2 on our grants?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Like I said, there just doesn't seem to be the stomach in the Congress to be able to pass something. Now, we do anticipate that there'll be a lame duck session. They may take a number of these bills. You know, they're trying to get an immigration bill passed. They're trying to get an energy bill passed. They're still hung up on the whole financial disclosure bill. There's a campaign finance reform bill that they can't come to agreement on. So there's all these things that are pending. There may be a lame duck session in which they roll these things into some kind of omnibus bill to be able to pass them. But again, that depends on the elections. It may be such that they come back and they say, you know what, let's just kick the can down to the next session of Congress.
Let me just ask, if they're not grant opportunities under ARA, I'm sure there'll be individual grants. How do we manage to ensure that we are applying for those that may come out of different departments but not under the banner of ARA?
We actually have a proposal that we're working through, and we hope to bring to you for the creation of what we're calling an urban policy working group, which would really go after, it seems though the federal government is interested in breaking down these silos, and so we want to put ourselves in a position where we can go and compete with various departments. So we're probably using the same model that we've been using here with ARA. We want to come to you and talk to you about a proposal to do just that.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's move on to item 2.
I think Stacy has...
Stacy, you have something? I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just going to give a brief update of our recent awards and how we've been doing with expenditures. Since our last meeting of the ad hoc committee, the city has been awarded an additional $25.3 million, bringing the city's total grant awards to $622 million. The new awards consist of one to the Department of City Planning for $280,000 for the transit-oriented districts South Los Angeles project. Planning is a recipient of the County Department of Public Health Communities Putting Prevention to Work grant. These funds will be used to create a comprehensive policy to increase physical activity, improve nutrition, and decrease the prevalence of obesity by changing the built environment to make it easier and more appealing for people to be physically active. The second award is to the Community Development Department in the amount of $25 million for the Summer 2010 Subsidized Summer Youth Employment Program. This item is also on the agenda for today. It's item number 4, and Community Development Department can provide more information on that one. We also have updated information on job creation and retention expenditures and reimbursements for the month ending April 30th. For the month of April, just over 800 jobs were created or retained with Recovery Act funds. This consists of 522 jobs in the private sector and 278 jobs in the city and public sector. Additionally, at the last meeting, we reported that a total of 476.15 jobs were created or retained for the month of March. However, subsequent to our meeting, we received additional information, bringing the total jobs for March to 704.79. Cumulative expenditures through April 30th have increased by $15.3 million to $63.5 million, with total reimbursements through April 30th at $49.7 million.
Okay, thank you. Let me ask one thing. Is the mayor's office going to prepare something for the council on that Senate bill that you reflected that we...
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we'll be getting that from you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Let the record reflect Mr. Rosenthal's here. Let's move... You have any questions on item 1, on the overview? Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good to see folks made it here and everything, considering the Laker win. From my perspective, it's today, which is what, the 19th of June?
Yes, sir. 18th.
Or the 20th?
18th.
18th. Okay. How many jobs have we created since this program started?
We do not have a cumulative total that I can report to you at this time, but we'd be more than happy to take a look at that. For now, we just have figures for the month of April. So,
Part of the problem is the OMB changed the way that they do reporting. They no longer report cumulative jobs. They only report basically jobs that you create within a particular quarter. And the problem with that is a lot of these jobs could be temporary jobs. You have a summer youth jobs, you hire 860 people for a 3-month period, then they're gone. Next summer, you hire another 800 people. So did you create 1,600 jobs, or did you create 800 jobs that you had here and you had here? So they stopped doing that, and nobody is keeping track of the cumulative. All they do is report on what each quarter how many jobs that we create.
Well, what we need to do, no offense to anybody in the strategy, is put together a grid, a chart that talks about day one when the program started to today, how many jobs were created in each categories and how long the jobs have lasted for or will last for. We need a comprehensive appreciation of shovel-ready opportunities that the President of the United States has talked about. That's number one. We've got to have it, and we need to get the cumulative effect. We need to know if it's 3 months or 6 months or a year or two. We need to know that data. Secondly, the total amount of, and I'm sorry if I missed this, total number of dollars that we try and have on the pocket. I see a figure here. Is that $1,545,214,000? Is that the total of requests? That's the fresh number.
Correct. That includes both the formula money that we were guaranteed and the competitive money that we've gone after. So if you actually subtract out the formula money that we're guaranteed, what remains is how much that we've gone after and then how much we've been awarded. And I think our batting average is about 20%.
Okay. About 20%, so 20% of the $1.5 billion, but I see $621 million.
Correct.
Right.
So $621 million is how much the city's been awarded. That consists of both competitive and formula grants. Now, if you're looking at just competitive, it's about $261 million that's been awarded. And of that 261, if you look to the left, the 445.8 million represents how much we actually requested as part of those grant applications. So if you notice, we're not always getting our entire grant request or dollar amount.
Right. But that I'd like to also tie to the job situation, obviously. Okay. Next question is this. The President, 4 or 5 days ago, said that he was thinking of $50 billion directly to the cities. Our colleague, Ed Reyes, who's on the National Board of the League of Cities, was back there during that week when that discussion happened. There was optimism, because I have been saying since day one, if the President really wants to help us keep our librarians, our parks open, help us keep our transportation departments in play, keep our street services going, the basic services that the taxpayers expect, we're cutting back on, okay? Obviously, we're cutting back because we have structural deficits that have to be dealt with, and we have to balance our budget, and we have very few options of how to tighten up our budget. So do we have any sense of stimulus money coming from the President and the Congress that would go directly to the cities that could help us provide the services to our people and keep our people on the payroll?
I reported back earlier on the legislation of what's going on at the national level with respect to that, and yes, to acknowledge the President did send a letter to the Congress asking for that money, and the bulk of that money, I think $43 billion of that money is for teacher layoffs. So there's not directly benefiting local government. There's some money in there, I believe, for police and fire as well, too. But as I was indicating, the Congress has been reluctant to get into. They haven't passed the emergency supplemental for the war they were supposed to do that included that money in there. They haven't passed the tax extender bill, which, as of today, the Medicare increase or the decrease of payments to doctors goes into effect, 21% decrease.
That's just outrageous, by the way.
There's just not
unbelievable.
There's just not an interest between the Republicans and the Blue Dog Democrats of increasing the deficit, and so they can't seem to get anything passed, and it's just stymied. And the best hope we have probably is after the election that they'll have some kind of lame duck session and roll a lot of this stuff into one bill and pass it.
So your gut is between now and November, the re-election and the politics of...
They can't get an energy bill passed. They can't get a financial disclosure bill passed. They can't get an immigration bill passed. They can't get a campaign finance bill. That's all clogging. And now we've got the Gulf oil thing that's, fixated everybody.
Is there anything we can do as electeds here locally? Should we pick up the phone?
Our two senators are supportive, and basically our delegation, for the most part, is supportive. of it. I did indicate that Sherrod Brown in the Senate has introduced basically a companion bill to the Miller Local Jobs Bill. That bill doesn't seem to be going anywhere in the House because it requires pay-go offsets for the funding of it. But he's introduced something in the Senate, so we'll prepare letters of support and help you on the council resolution so we can go on record in being supportive of that. And the mayor, through his role with the U.S. Conference of Mayors as vice president, is working with other mayors around the country. I mean, one of our strategies, if we could get some of these, of the Republican mayors in these large cities to also start yelling and screaming to the Republican members of Congress about the need to help cities out, that might help. But we just can't get anything passed. They're just...
With that politics in mind, do you expect the actual overall stimulus money we talk about here on Fridays is going to slow down until after the November election?
Yeah, we're pretty much at the end of the federal government giving out. We're now in the situation of basically spending the money and accounting for the money. That's what we're going to be doing for the next 2.5 years.
Really, 2.5 years?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Mr.
Thank you very much. We'll move to item 2. Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Councilman. Rush, do you want to go ahead and speak?
Certainly. Good morning, Councilman. Rushmore Cervantes with the Housing Department, joined by Doug Swager and Doug Guthrie from the department. On the heels of the Housing and Economic Recovery Act funds, where we received $32.9 million for the Neighborhood Stabilization 1 program, the federal government made available NSP 2 under ARA grant funds, and the council authorized the department to submit a proposal for $100 million to the federal government. We're happy to announce that the department was successful in its award, and it was awarded $100 million for NSP 2. So the department is requesting authority today to accept those funds.
Yeah, before we go there, could you just give us a brief overview of 1 and then roll right into what 2 and how it differs, or if it's identical, so we'll have a comparison?
Certainly. Well, the NSP program was designed to address the foreclosure crisis throughout the entire country, to allow municipalities to target properties or target communities in which they were the hardest hit, where there were declining property values, high foreclosure rates, high loan costs, as well as rising unemployment. So through those targeted areas, cities with the use of NSP dollars can go and acquire those properties, rehabilitate them, and then turn around and sell those properties to low-income purchasers or renters. It goes from 120% AMI as the high point down to below 50% AMI. Of the grant, 25% must be allocated for individuals at 50% AMI and below. And again, there are targeted areas throughout the city of Los Angeles. NSP 2 is similar to that of NSP 1 with higher reporting requirements. And the targeted areas that have been identified in NSP 2 are slightly smaller than that of NSP 1, that are more concentrated in those areas which were hardest hit throughout the city. So the department is leveraging both 1 and 2 together, working with CRA as well as working with 2 other nonprofits that receive funds in the NSP 2 round, so that we can get maximum penetration into the communities to provide stability.
Give us an idea on 1, how many units that we'd be able to acquire and either rent or sell, and then what would be the projection for 2?
Well, right now, let me just first say that the initial goal as submitted to the committee and also to HUD was about approximately 310 units. But through experience, we've realized that some of the conditions of the properties were worse than we initially thought, coupled with the fact that under NSP 2, we submitted a proposal that had a high green standard that we worked with the Enterprise Community Foundation to establish. So utilizing that green standard, we applied that to NSP 1, so it increased the cost a bit, but also with that, we're going to have high-quality homes. To answer your question, the estimate of 310, we're going to revise downwards to about 250 units. And that's, you've got to remember also, with this monies, we're also going to have program income, so that will help sustain the program for a period of time beyond the cutoff of the grant. NSP 1, all of the funds need to be encumbered, or, basically obligated by the end of August.
Wow.
Certainly, when we are going to achieve that goal. So within that period, and then moving forward with the program income, we anticipate approximately 250 units to be rehabilitated. And again, within that 250 units, 25% of those units will have to be obligated to individuals at 50% AMI and below.
Okay. And then what do we project for 2?
Right now, we're estimating, based on our experience with NSP 1, approximately 750, and it could go higher depending on the level of efficiencies we can gain and what kind of prices we can get on the properties. And I must preface, though, that the city is going in and we're purchasing the worst properties in the community, because if not for these NSP dollars, the community itself is not going to be able to resolve the blight. And by targeting the worst properties, we're not only just rehabilitating them, we're actually changing the floor plan in some cases, making it into a family livable unit where maybe two-bedroom, one-bath, we're converting it to 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and to taking it to a green standard. So with that, we're hoping for then having pride and ownership in the community and see an expansion of recovery in those neighborhoods that we target.
Okay. And could you explain the issue of the administrative cost? They put some MAC caps on you, and how that's basically differentiated between operating program and the basic administrative programs.
Certainly, Councilman. The grant allows for a 10% administrative cap. The department has submitted a budget for consideration that is approximately $7 million. With that, though, there is also program administration that is allowed under the grant, and that's also that's primarily going to be absorbed through the nonprofit that was created by the city working with Enterprise to help facilitate this program, RNLA. Restore Neighborhoods LA, and through their costs, they're going to incur. Those are primarily going to be drawn down on the program administrative portion.
Okay. And then you mentioned earlier, one of the changes basically is a more concentrated map area. On Phase 2, are we going to also, I may not have the right term, but the walk-up program, is that going to be a part of it, or is that relegated just to 1?
Well, no, it's the walk-in program under NSP 1 was part of the initial design, and it proved to be not as successful as we initially anticipated by virtue of the fact that, well, let me just back up. Basically, what the walk-in program was designed to do is similar to the department's walk-in program or first-time home buyer program, in that we would pre-qualify buyers and give them their notification that they've been pre-approved, and they were to go out and purchase homes that have been foreclosed. The problem was that they had to submit a proposal that was 1% below the appraised value. Secondly, the banks were having issues with the fact that we were requiring soft seconds, so the banks were reluctant to finance properties and these individuals, whether there was a soft second for rehabilitated work. So many of the home buyers that we had, or would-be home buyers that we awarded, were not competitive, and they were not able to win bids when they were submitting their proposals for homes. So we put that on hold, and that was at the recommendation of HUD. So NSP 2, we may bring it out in the future if the circumstances change, working with the banks, see if they're willing to honor some of these would-be home buyers with the 1% below the appraised value. But right now it's been held in abeyance, and we shifted our focus primarily to the nonprofit that we created, and their goal is to buy the properties in bulk and try to gain efficiencies that way.
Okay. But you have the flexibility to recreate it?
Yes, we do.
Okay, very good.
Hey, I just want to restate what the document says here, and just talk to me about it. That we requested $100 million in a competitive bid, and we got the entire grant.
Correct.
Which is sensational. $100 million.
We're very proud.
Beautiful moment. Secondly, it says that we must spend $50 million within the first 2 years, that is by February 11, 2012, and the entire grant must be spent within 3 years by February 10, 2013. So we're looking at a 3-year program of spending $100 million. And so the first part will be getting a staff together that figures out how you go forward with this, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the criteria you're going to use, or how are you going to go about getting those particular properties? What's the strategy that you're using?
Well, I'll let Doug Swager go into the details of the actual properties we identify.
Yeah. I mean, how do we identify the property? How do we get our hands on it? And so on and so forth.
Okay, thanks. Doug Swager with the Los Angeles Housing Department. Councilman, we, through our nonprofit, the primary source of properties has been through a national nonprofit, National Community Stabilization Trust, that was set up specifically for NSP. And this trust works with several of the larger banks that own and service foreclosed properties. So they're working with Chase, Wells, Bank of America, Fannie, Freddie, and others. And those banks, as they get foreclosures, make them available to the trust before they make them available to the open public. And the trust has relationships with all the different cities and agencies that have received NSP money throughout the country. So if a bank makes a property available to the trust that's in Los Angeles, then the trust makes them available to us. If there's a property in Boston, the trust makes them available in Boston, so forth and so on. So as, they provide us these lists of properties as they become available, and we have first opportunity to purchase them. So that's been our primary source of acquiring the properties. In addition to that, we've met directly with Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, to let them know of our areas so that they can directly make certain properties available to us, and that is starting to show some success in addition to working with the trust. And finally, I think the nonprofit that we've established, they're working with local real estate agents. They've done a request for proposals for local real estate brokers to work with them to go out and find the properties in the community. So, we get lists given to us, and in addition, we're able to identify specific areas in the community that are eligible under the program and have people go out and sort of seek these properties for us.
It's very interesting. Now, dealing with the banks, do you negotiate with them the price of that property so that it's a reasonable price, or are they gouging us and ripping us off as well?
No, they're not gouging and ripping us off. We do negotiate. And the essential, under the NSP program, HUD requires that we get a minimum 1% discount off the current appraised value of the property. So that's in the legislation itself. In addition to that, the way we're negotiating with the banks is they look at a piece of property and they look at their holding cost, what it's going to cost them to hold the property over a certain period of time, how long they think it's going to take them to sell this property, and they reduce that from the current value of the property. So on average, we're getting on average about 15% discount off the current appraised value on these properties when we're buying them in bulk through the nonprofit.
And that appraised value, 50% discount, is there any opportunity for the existing homeowner that has a bad loan or the economy has put them in a threatened position of working with the bank to let that homeowner keep their property and at some kind of a packaging process from the bank that doesn't just throw them out and lose their home and they end up on the street? Is there any effort on that, or do we have juice enough to influence that process? Because as far as I'm concerned, I mean, this is fantastic. This has got to be the best news I've heard in a long time besides the Laker last night, okay? It's just great that we have this $100 million, and applaud everybody who played a role in this thing. This is just sensational. But saying that, a lot of banks, when they got the literally hundreds of billions of dollars from taxpayers through the federal government, the hope was that the banks would use that money to work with those folks who own those homes and be more reasonable instead of this ridiculous gouging of them and then ripping them off and then taking their property away and throwing the people out. I mean, that's what banks have done with our money. that our president and Congress gave to them. Are you able to negotiate any of that aspect of it or not?
With the NSP money, it's not an eligible use of the funds to do foreclosure prevention activities. It's designed to stabilize the neighborhoods once the foreclosures occur.
But if I could, there's another pot of money to address.
Yeah, exactly. The NSP program is really for the purpose of dealing with properties that have already been foreclosed and those owners have lost their homes. But there are other pots of money that are still trying to find its way out to deal with foreclosure mitigation. For instance, there was an announcement in March for the hardest hit funds, which are going to 5 states in the country. California is to receive $700 million in those hardest hit funds through the California Housing Finance Agency. They submitted what I thought was an excellent proposal, and we did work with them on that April 16th, I believe. So I think we'll be hearing shortly of an announcement of funds that are specifically set aside to be writing down principal, to be keeping families in their home, to be a much more aggressive foreclosure mitigation program that should be put in place later this summer.
That's also excellent news, because obviously that would be a smart move from all of us to do. All right, back to the $100 million in the 3 years. How many homes do we figure we get that we purchase and work with during that period? Is that 250 that I'm seeing?
Well, 250 is the revised unit count for NSP1, which was $32.9 million plus program income. With the $100 million plus the program income, we're estimating about 750 units plus. And the units, I mean, that's consistent of duplexes, fourplexes, as well as single-family homes, and on occasion some multifamily properties. Right now, as an example, with NSP1 and into NSP2, we're looking to utilize NSP dollars for the Dunbar Hotel, which has been foreclosed on. So we're looking for creative ways to be able to utilize this money to be able to, again, influence the community and provide, a kickstart to revitalization.
This is such a good story. So we have 750 minimum structure.
That's the target, right.
What will be the criteria once we get it and we rehab it, which is basically what we're going to be doing, right, on the worst of properties? Who gets eligibility to get those properties?
Anyone that would qualify for an FHA loan. We actually have on our website, we take applications, and basically they qualify like anyone else for a loan, and we also provide subsidies, because obviously we're dealing with individuals that are not necessarily high-wage income makers. They're 120% or below, so we provide subsidies as well.
And this not-for-profit will manage those assets over a period of years?
No, they're not holding to the properties. Basically, the nonprofit is acquiring the properties, working with contractors to fix it, and then working through agents to sell the property, and that's it. Then the individual owner have it. On the multifamily, whether it be duplex, fourplex, or apartments, we'll contract out with nonprofits that will work through contractors to rehabilitate the units, the facilities, and then operate it.
And when they do that, do the banks then come back in and lend money to these potential owners, or?
Correct.
So it might be the same bank, like B of A, that gives you something, you turn around, you fix it up, and B of A might end up being the ongoing.
That's a distinct possibility.
God, we got to really negotiate with those banks and squeeze them for as much as, I'm serious. We're in a very good driver position with the program. Last question is I have a challenge, many of you know, in my district. I have people living in cars and campers. The only piece of land in the entire Southland, and I mean from Santa Barbara to San Diego, it's about 8 blocks wide and about, a mile and a half long. It's a little piece of property. And due to the irresponsible behavior of the Coastal Commission, this is the only spot near the ocean where people can live, literally, who are in cars and campers. And we have a significant number, because we're the only area, Venice, in the extremely tolerant community that allows it. Is there any possibility that we can create housing, permanent housing? I don't want to use that bureaucratic word, Section 8, but the notion of low income, I mean people on the street kind of thing, where we could take some of these complexes and create housing for people who desperately need it.
Well, it certainly is a possibility, but you're burdened by the fact that the property values in your community tend to be pretty high, and it makes it more challenging for federal funds to be utilized in those areas. But we can certainly work with you, Councilman. We're aware of your community and that particular enclave of residents, so we can work with you to try to identify some sort of funds or some sort of program to able to assist you.
That's good. Is the county involved in the same program that we're involved in here as a city?
Not that I'm aware of. Are they county? Sorry. NHS.
Yeah, well, LA County did get they did receive approximately $14-15 million of the NSP1 money. They were not awarded any NSP2 money. Their program is effectively helping individual home buyers to buy foreclosed properties in certain areas, sort of unincorporated areas of the county. But in addition to them, in the city of Los Angeles and in the county of Los Angeles Neighborhood Housing Services received a grant of NSP2 money, about $66 million, and they can serve people in LA City. And also up in the Valley, New Economics for Women was part of a grant application that was awarded funding. And, of course, Habitat for Humanity is also awarded funding, and they can also participate in LA.
Let me just ask, this comes to council today, and we have 3 more items in 12 minutes, and so maybe we can just, if we could move this now and then continue the questioning in council.
Very exciting.
And we can deal with it. And also, the clerk has a motion requested by CD10 to ask for some report backs that we'll add to the committee report. But we can continue the questioning, but thank you very much. Also, item coming to council is item 5. If we can deal with that first, and then if there's time, the other 2 items come to council on the 22nd. So critical one is number 5.
Ed Rose with the CAO's office. The report before you is references a request from the City Attorney's Office to accept a grant in a total amount of $800,000 from the ARA program. The umbrella program is the Communities Putting Prevention to Work, and the city is a sub-recipient to the county's program, the Target program, which stands for Teens and Retailers Getting Educated on Tobacco. The grant will fund 4 positions in the City Attorney's Office. Full cost recovery is achieved through direct salaries and related costs and overhead. And it also provides expense monies for related expenses and computer equipment. And the program will be initiated through the City Attorney's Office through 16 to 20 schools within the LA Unified School District citywide. Staff is at the table from the City Attorney's Office to answer any questions you may have.
Any question?
No.
Okay. Thank you very much. We'll move item 5. It's on the agenda today. And so if there's any additional questions between now and 10 o'clock, we'll see you at council meeting.
Okay, we just had just a technical question, technical amendment to our report. Is the recommendation number 1, the term of the grant should be June 15th, 2010 through March 18th, 2012.
Give me that again.
June 15th, 2010 through March 18th, 2012.
So that should be
Yes.
terms. Okay, very good. Make sure that we get that in the committee report, and we'll also can address that council. So thank you very much. Mr. Rosenthal, if we can move item 4 on consent, because that's going to come to us as part of a jobs committee report in the near future. And then if we can go to item 3.
So moved on 4.
Okay. Go to item 3 with the remainder of our time.
Hey, how are you? Were you out there last night? Were you out there last night? Yeah.
Good morning.
If we can get the thumbnail.
Sure. Well, you have a whole team of us here that are really happy to come in front of you to talk about our green job efforts.
I think what you can do is just give us a brief overview so we can move it, and then we'll get a more in-depth issue on the 22nd when it's before council.
So we have two grants in front of you. One grant is the Pathways Out of Poverty and the Department of Labor. Our good friends at the LA Community College District is the lead of the grant. That's a $4 million grant. The city is going to receive about $910,000 as a partner in the grant itself. And the second one in front of you is $1 million grant from the state that's connected to our municipal retrofit program. Both of these are training grants, specifically for low-income populations, as well as dislocated workers and other disadvantaged populations. But the larger part of the transmittal really talks about all of our efforts that we have been pursuing to connect our unemployed workforce to the green economy. And there's a number of grants that we have in the pipeline. There's also a number of other grants that we have accepted that we'll be bringing to you shortly. Two other grants specifically that have come in. We've also have invested through our sector initiative significant amount of money in the green sector's work and the green training, about $2 million. So Robert Science of the CDD.
Hi, Larry Frank, Mayor's Office.
Teresa Sanchez, Mayor's Office.
Good morning, Marvin Martinez, Vice Chancellor, Workforce Development, LACCD.
If we can impose on, from LACC to come back to council on the 22nd, because I think we do need a very in-depth presentation, so because jobs are significant, not only in the community but to the council members, and so we can ask for a very in-depth presentation during the council period. Do you have any questions?
No questions.
So we will move this item and see you on the 22nd.
Can we move it to the 23rd? On the 22nd, we have a major policy event.
That's right.
If you could...
Continue
we can
to the
continue
23rd?
it once we get to the 22nd, but...
Okay, perfect.
Okay,
We'll come back on the
work that
23rd.
out, but...
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Are there any other items?
Clarification, Councilman, for items 2, 3, and 5, you're moving the CEO report recommendations.
Yes. So we're moving those, and the one on consent, we'll see that again. Okay. Thank you very much. So that concludes the agenda for the Ad hoc Committee on Economic Recovery and Reinvestment. We're adjourned.